Who doesn't love pumpkins? Especially evil pumpkins. If you are a fan of pumpkins, jack-o'-lantern carving, or my particular favorite, evil pumpkins, then listen on to these chilling stories. Up first, friends, one of my personal favorites. I went to a weird pumpkin patch by Ronnie 14. A week before Halloween, and we still didn't have a pumpkin. What kind of father was I? True, Molly and I had just moved the kids to St. Simon's Island in September, but that was still no excuse. Not when we all loved Halloween, especially our 8-year-old daughter Sarah and 7-year-old son John. I'd already put up the reliable witch and ghost decorations. Now, I just needed the granddaddy of them all, a jack-o'-lantern. Molly and the kids left for a hayride and a ghost tour, so like an archaeology hunt, Michael had to get the pumpkin all by himself. Late Friday evening, I made my way down to the pumpkin patch, a patch sponsored by St. Simon's United Methodist Church. The place was small and close to the beach. Nothing more than a cute fake field, one surrounded by abandoned buildings and playgrounds, rather than barns and plantations. Already, sunlight faded around me, my UGA hoodie no match for the howling wind. The breeze blew my long blonde hair everywhere, making dirt fly into my big blue eyes and pointed nose. But still, I had a job to do. Fatherhood was much more important than the thankless stress of being a realtor for this wealthy community. Amidst the darkening darkness, I explored the church's pumpkin patch. A clean white picket fence entrapped me with all the other St. Simon stragglers, attractive cashiers, and a sea of pumpkins. As I walked past a tent, I waved at the teenage boy and girl managing the cash register. Armed with their beaming smiles and beaming baby blues, they waved back. Soon, I passed a large mirror and a grinning scarecrow, my reflection shrouded by the twilight sky. The search was agonizing. Sarah and John's pleas for pumpkins blared through my mind, as did Molly's profane demands. The chilling breeze wasn't helping, nor was the dying sunlight. I needed the perfect pumpkin, not one of those babies or behemoths. The multicolored ones were too silly, the blue ones obnoxious, the gray ghastly, the wrinkled too damned ugly. Turning, I saw a wooden pumpkin watching me. Its red painted smile was wide open to a laugh, wide open to taunt me, and given its size, wide open to eat me. I felt the pressure of the pumpkin patch, claustrophobic in this Halloween cluster. The smiling scarecrows surrounded me. The Charlie Brown photo on the boards bullied me. And then, finally, I saw it. A clean, pristine pumpkin in the corner. An all-American beauty sitting all by itself, right up against the fence. Relief hit me. This was a combination of love and scare at first sight. I knew this pumpkin was the one. Eager, I stepped up to the strange shrine and picked up the orange treasure. The plant felt light, bulky but hollow. Smirking, I tossed it in my hands like a basketball. Even Sarah and John could carry this baby. Through the twilight darkness, I leaned in closer, a closer examination. And then I saw where the pumpkin had already been carved. A crude lobotomy ran all around the stump, the pumpkin's lid ready to be pulled. A gust of breeze bombarded my hair. Feeling slight unease, I shook my bangs to the side and looked towards the patch. Only 2 customers were left. Them and the teenage couple were all that remained. Only now we stood in pitch blackness. The dark intermission before dawn had just given way to night. Yet I couldn't shake the lingering dread. Who the hell carved the pumpkin, and why was it out here for sale? Furthermore, why was it all by itself? Moonlight illuminated the scene. I glanced up to see a glowing full moon. Several lights then cut out from the tent. I knew I had to go. Molly and the kids needed me. Our preparations for Halloween 2019 were almost complete. My arms wobbled. Somehow, the pumpkin now felt heavier. I looked back at the orange canvas. A new face now stared back at me. No silly grin, no crooked scream, nothing carved. Instead, what I saw was a glaring human face, a real human face. I couldn't scream or cry out in horror. My hands stayed bound to the orange head. Familiar baby blues peered out from that jack-o'-lantern. I saw a pointed nose, an affable smirk, an exact snapshot of how I looked moments earlier. Caught between disbelief and terror, I stared on at my pumpkin portrait. I didn't want to believe the scary sight, but I had no other choice. Trembling, I ran my hands along the face. There was no hard, cold touch, nor were the nose or the eyes painted. Instead, my fingers began to sink into flesh. This jack-o'-lantern wore an all-too-human mask, and one that looked just like me. "What the heck?" I muttered. My fear only increased, particularly since my own blue eyes were glowing at me. Frantic, I reached towards the stump and yanked out the lid. The vague lighting was clear to show me the horror within. There was a gooey mess in there, all right, just not a massacre of seeds and orange mush. No, a human brain was inside. A brain left in pieces and smithereens from so many scoops and slices. Skull fragments replaced the pumpkin seeds. Red blood the juice. Terror paralyzed me. I felt numb, hollow. No longer did I even feel that chilling wind. I faced the tent. "What the hell is this?" I shouted. Startled, the couple faced me, then let out a collective scream into the night. The mirror showed me why. That wasn't Michael in the reflection. Not with the triangular eyes, the evil smile, the facial features comically carved onto my face in grotesque fashion. All white flickering flames fluttered beneath my flesh. My flesh. It wasn't me. More screams erupted through the patch. Behind my pumpkin plastic surgery, I watched the disturbing scene unfold. Moonlight illuminated the teenage couple and the remaining customers, and now I had a better look at them, or rather, at their transformation. During the panic, they still showed carved smiles and glares. Like me, their faces morphed from human to ghoulish jack-o'-lantern masks. Real-life masks. The 5 of us now nothing more than walking Halloween caricatures. And then I saw the pumpkins resembled us more than we did. At least, what we used to be. They had big eyes, calm smiles, defining facial features, all of it melded onto their orange skin with precision. No longer were we in a pumpkin patch. This was a damned wax museum, an uncanny valley of excited jack-o'-lanterns. Silence settled onto St. Simon's. None of us could talk. Our smiles stayed permanent. All I could do was exchange frozen glances with the others. No way we could share words, our tormented emotions seen only through our triangular eyelids. Like an avalanche of sadness, Halloween memories hit me hard. Molly, Sarah, John. Instead of a pumpkin, they'd be getting a disfigured father. And now, instead of tears, I cried orange slime, felt yellow seeds stick to my cheeks. To the slime. Long hair brushed against my arm. I then confronted my chosen pumpkin. Its skin was now pale white. Blonde hair replaced the stump, and on that jack-o'-lantern, my face became all the more detailed. Moving on, friends, we go to a truly terrifying tale written by Jake Wick, titled The Pumpkin Patch. I shall say no more than that. The story does all the telling. Liam was the believing type, but even more so than your average third grader. Most kids at his age believed in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, but Liam found those tales foolish and irrelevant, fictional characters conjured up to draw young hearts and minds into holidays. Liam surmised that his faith could only lie with a single idol. Like an agnostic questioning which deity out of Yahweh, Allah, and Buddha could be the true God, Liam knew that there could only be one authentic holiday totem. There couldn't exist both Santa and a tooth fairy. There could only be one. And for Liam, the one in question was the Pumpkin King. Down the road from Liam's house was a pumpkin patch that stretched on toward the horizon, below which the sun dipped each and every evening. This, Liam believed, was where his holiday deity arose to reward his disciples young and old. The night on which this happened was All Hallows' Eve, of course. Now, Liam knew in his heart that this Pumpkin King was the one true idol, just as any tiny tot with their eyes all aglow knew that Santa would slide down the chimney with his bag of goodies on Christmas Eve. But the kids at school thought Liam to be asinine for his childlike beliefs. And just like the world's religions, where believers of talking serpents poke fun at believers of winged horses, the grade school believers of flying reindeer and Christmas elves jeered at Liam for his devotion to a pumpkin god. When are you gonna stop believing in that stupid pumpkin? Hey Liam, watch me carve the Pumpkin King's face. Santa's real, my parents told me, but my parents said the Pumpkin King isn't real. On his 2-mile walk home, the school's 5th grade bullies, Frankie, Tyler, and Aspen, waited patiently for Liam to walk under the arched stone bridge. When Liam emerged from under it, he was greeted by a shower of cold and slimy pumpkin guts that rained down on his head, immediately followed by sounds of devilish snickering. Word spread through the small South Carolina town that little Liam Henson believed in the occult and would be spending Halloween night in a pumpkin patch awaiting his pagan deity, a notion that was met with judgmental stares and virtue-signaling gossip from those Bible Belt dwellers. And soon, Liam's parents stopped receiving invitations to local church functions. His older sister was shunned at school, believed to be some sort of witch who, like her brother, bowed to heathen idols. The afternoon of Halloween soon arrived. The classroom was thoroughly decorated for the occasion. Paper cutout jack-o'-lanterns were strung together with yarn and tacked to a corked staff on the wall. A large black cat cutout was pasted to the classroom door, and a jack-o'-lantern bowl filled with candy sat atop the teacher's desk. None of the decorations in school dared echo anything to do with witches or goblins or vampires or devils, something which would have drawn judgment from more than a few sets of parents. Liam's school held a trick-or-treating event within its walls. Costumed children lined up outside each classroom to receive their treats. Liam, of course, dressed as a pumpkin. He received the usual jeers from his classmates. If they weren't making fun of his devotion to the Pumpkin King, they were laughing at the fact that the pumpkin costumes were normally reserved for an infant's first Halloween. It was not until Liam was kindly asked to refrain from the school-wide trick-or-treating, however, that he became most distraught. "Liam, I think it's best you hang out in Principal Revis' office for an hour," his teacher, Miss Volskay, said. He hated her with a passion. "Why?" Liam asked innocently. "Because." Liam hated her for that, the way she'd never give a real answer. She acted as if she was the all-powerful overlord upon which the righteousness of rules rested. But she was only part of the problem. The bigger issue was that Liam was a believer among non-believers, at least when it came to his Pumpkin King. These Bible thumpers just wouldn't have it. The Easter Bunny and Santa Claus were fine to them. They were the mascots for Christian holidays, and were thus virtuous and pure. To them, the Pumpkin King was equal in nature to the god Pan, upon which their Satan character's appearance was based. And so Liam sat and seethed and stewed in the principal's office. Principal Revis offered him candy from the bowl on his desk. As Liam pathetically chewed on a piece of caramel, he thought of how much better the other kids had it in terms of quality and quantity of candy. It made his blood boil to think of it, of how those commonplace zombies were rewarded for their lack of original thinking. "Excuse me, I hope I'm not interrupting anything," Miss B, the school counselor, said, who entered the room with a firm knock on the already opened door. "Not at all," Principal Revis replied. "Have a seat." Oh, God. Liam knew what this meant. Miss B was about to counsel him. Even at his age, Liam thought it to be a useless position that could be handled by anyone and everyone. Miss B sat down across from Liam, next to Principal Revis. As Miss B adjusted her hair, Liam caught Revis's eyes wandering down toward her tights-covered legs. Such hypocrisy. "Now, Liam," said Miss B in her thick southern accent, talking to Liam in a most passively degrading manner. "We wanted to talk to you today about certain things you've been saying around school." "Okay," said Liam, uninterested. "Liam, do you know what the word gossip means?" "Yes," Liam replied. There was a pause. Miss B was waiting for an answer. "Go on then, tell me." "It means to go around saying things that aren't true." "That's right. Well, that's sort of what this is about, Liam." There was another pause as Miss B stared Liam down with demeaning puppy dog eyes. "Okay," said Liam amidst the awkward stare. "I hear you've been going around school talking about a thing called the Pumpkin King. Is that true?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's almost Halloween, and every Halloween the Pumpkin King comes out of the pumpkin patch and gives presents to all his believers." "Now, that's not really true, though, is it?" "Yes, it is." "Liam, there's no such thing as a Pumpkin King." "Are you a God-fearing woman?" Miss B was taken aback, and this was twofolds. Not only had young Liam turned the questioning onto her, but he was also asking an intelligent question. intelligent for his age. She couldn't tell whether he was that mature in intellect or if he was just repeating something he'd heard an adult say. Miss B stammered. Yes, I believe in God. Go to church twice a week. Liam grimaced at how she pronounced the word twice. And do you believe this story about the snake in the garden? Of course. First story in the Bible. Is a talking snake in a garden less crazy than a talking pumpkin in a patch? Well, Liam, it's important you understand the difference. The Bible's the Word of God. This was going nowhere. Liam quit and spent the rest of the session staring at the wall as Miss B rattled off about Baptist drivel and quotes about dishing dirt that she picked up at a help site for counselors. She is a child, Liam thought, unenlightened, uneducated. Evening soon came, and there was Liam's older sister, Tara, wearing her glittery witch costume. She scolded him for his stupid beliefs that had garnered her so much flack in school and around town. I swear to God, she said, if I hear one more word from you about this stupid Pumpkin King, I'm going to drop you off in the cemetery overnight. But Liam would not be spending the night in a cemetery. He'd be spending it in the pumpkin patch near his house. Tonight was the night, and it made him grin. All the torments, the virtue-signaling righteous fanatics, the bullying, the harsh words, the neglect. It would all pay off this chilly Halloween. Liam left the house, but unlike the hordes of children walking the earth that evening, Liam was not in a costume. He wore jeans and had on a fur coat to keep warm once the sun fully set. His lack of a costume drew confused stares from adults who were handing out candy. The other children were too busy gobbling down chocolate to notice. Liam cut through several yards as he made his way to the patch. If he hurried, he'd be able to catch the reddish-orange sunset in its full glory. As he walked among swirling hordes of dead autumn leaves, he saw something out of the corner of his eye that he hoped was just his imagination. But it wasn't. He saw them clear as day. Frankie, Tyler, and Aspen, the three bullies, were standing on the side of someone's house. They saw Liam, too, who was obviously walking off towards the pumpkin patch. In this moment, Liam wished he hadn't run off at the mouth so about the Pumpkin King. The three bullies seemed to freeze in place as their hawk-like eyes tracked Liam's every step. "Going to see the Pumpkin Man?" One of them shouted it. Liam wasn't sure which one. This was bad. They surely wouldn't pass up a chance to get Liam alone in a pumpkin patch. Liam began to picture his head covered in pumpkin guts yet again. Liam kept on walking, avoiding eye contact with his three tormentors. He could still feel the weight of their eyeballs against his back, though, but he didn't dare look back, as it might have further provoked them. Liam arrived in the pumpkin patch at exactly the time he'd hoped. The sun was halfway below the horizon, and it gleamed a reddish glow that turned the sky around it pink. Liam perched atop a massive pumpkin and watched the sun set. Before he knew it, the sun was gone, giving way to a starry night sky that was complete with a bright orange harvest moon. The air was chilly now, and Liam's teeth slightly chattered as the wind glided over the back of his neck. The occasional sound of a solitary wind-blown leaf bouncing off of a nearby pumpkin would fill Liam with a small sense of hope. Each time it happened, he yearned that the sound was produced by the Pumpkin King's arrival. Still, Liam did have some current satisfaction at the fact that the three bullies hadn't shown up to torment him. At least, not yet. Nevertheless, Liam kept his eyes peeled for the fiends. The moon ascended to its peak in the sky. It must have been about 8 o'clock by now, and the trick-or-treaters were likely heading inside, typical of a Halloween night that fell on a weekday, but Liam was still out under the night sky. He was a patient boy, and he'd wait until his idol showed up. The rustling in the foliage nearby alerted Liam. He sat up and listened. The rustling sound was not far off. Was it the Pumpkin King? Liam surely hoped. Boo! Liam nearly fell off the pumpkin he was sitting on. Just as he'd feared, Frankie, Tyler, and Aspen had reared their fiendish faces in his pumpkin patch. "Has the Pumpkin King shown up yet?" Frankie jeered. He was the ringleader, and right now he looked especially out for blood. Each of the 3 brutes held massive bags of candy, probably stolen off some younger kids. "No comment?" Frankie persisted. "Bite me," Liam said. And in this moment, it was as if a bomb had detonated. Liam wasn't entirely sure of what he'd thought had actually exited his mouth. It was clear from the astonished faces around him that he indeed had said it. "What did you just say?" asked Aspen. Liam took a deep breath. "I said..." Liam still could not believe this was coming out of his mouth. "Bite me." Frankie snorted out a menacing laugh. "Wow," he said. "Even after all this time, you still don't get it." "What are we gonna do to him?" Tyler sneered. Frankie pondered. Liam sat atop the pumpkin, trying to look as calm as possible. His fingers nervously twitched by his side, and he hoped they didn't see. Any sign of weakness was like blood in the water to guys like this. He wasn't sure how he was going to get out of this jam. "I know." Those words alone uttered from Frankie's mouth sent chills through Liam's entire body. "He likes pumpkins so much, let's stuff him inside one. Grab him." Before Liam could budge, Tyler and Aspen grabbed his arms tight and yanked him off the pumpkin. "This one's perfect," said Frankie as he pointed to a large pumpkin. "Tyler, you got a knife?" "Right here." Tyler pulled a large sheathed hunting knife and tossed it to Frankie. Frankie pulled the knife out of its sheath slowly, as if he were some middle-aged swordsman, grinning wildly. "Perfect," Frankie exclaimed as he approached the large pumpkin. "Move." Frankie waved his hand wildly. Like houseflies, Tyler and Aspen parted from the large pumpkin, Liam in hand. Frankie knelt down in front of the massive pumpkin and viciously stuck the knife into its belly, ripping a gash right down the middle. The manner in which he stabbed it would cause one to imagine Frankie as a future serial killer. "Ah, yeah," said Frankie as he hacked away at the pumpkin's flesh. Tyler and Aspen nodded and snickered as they watched Frankie carve away. Eventually, Frankie had carved a large opening in the pumpkin, just big enough for a human body to be shoved into, but tight enough so that it could be taken out. Frankie gawked at Liam with those crazed eyes, looking quite proud of his work. "And now," said Frankie, "we insert our little pumpkin lover. Good luck pulling yourself out, freak." Tyler and Aspen yanked Liam toward the opening of the pumpkin, but they didn't have to use much force, which seemed to puzzle them. Liam was being curiously cooperative, and the fear had all but faded from his face. "What's the matter with you?" asked Tyler, getting right up in Liam's face. "At least scream a little. Cry for help. Something." Tyler and Aspen came to a screeching halt. They scrutinized Liam's unbelievably calm features, trying to make sense of it. "Aren't you scared?" Aspen asked. "Go ahead, Cry for Mom. She won't hear you when your ass is inside this pumpkin." Liam's relaxed demeanor persisted, but the three bullies also persisted. Tyler jabbed at Liam's shoulder with his fingertips. "Cry for help." He jabbed again, repeating his command. But Liam did nothing, not even a flinch. "The hell's going on?" Frankie asked in complete bafflement. "Is he tripping?" Liam wasn't going to give these little sadists the satisfaction. Suddenly, all the air from Liam's lungs exited his mouth in a single burst as Aspen's fist smashed the sweet spot on Liam's gut. "Cry for help," repeated Tyler as he too punched Liam, this time in the ribs. But Liam stayed defiant. Frankie, meanwhile, looked to be growing impatient. "Move," Frankie said as he approached Liam. Frankie raised the knife, and Liam felt his eyes widening on their own accord. Frankie grabbed the back of Liam's neck and knelt down in front of him so that the two were face to face. He brought the tip of it up to Liam's chin, holding it but a hair's breadth away. "Cry for help," Liam commanded. Then suddenly, a change in the wind. No one could quite put a finger on it, but the atmosphere shifted. A new presence made itself apparent in the pumpkin patch, but as yet wasn't seen. And just about every kid who ever had been bullied would have relished the way Frankie's eyes slowly began to fill up with fear. They widened as Liam's mouth slowly formed into a sadistic grin. "No," said Liam. "You cry for help." Frankie leaped to his feet and held the knife at the ready. He looked panicked, his head rapidly turning in all directions like that of a frightened songbird. "Who's there?" Frankie stammered, his voice cracking. "Who's there? Come out, or I'll gut you." A cold wind began to move across the pumpkin patch, blowing dead leaves all around. And there was a sudden rustling noise coming from nearby, and one could see the leaves and vines moving around from something crawling among them. "Over there!" Frankie shouted, pointing in the direction of the rustling. He began to approach, his stooges in tow. Liam stayed put, not quite sure if the three even remembered he was there. The three bullies then came to a screeching halt, the blood in their veins running wintry. Frankie dropped the knife as he watched a thick pumpkin vine slither along the ground like a boa constrictor. More vines soon followed, all of them crawling to one collective centric area in the middle of the patch. As this happened, Liam's menacing smile grew wider and wider. "What the hell is going on?" Aspen shouted. I don't know," Frankie said, "but I'm out of here." Frankie began to run off, but he hadn't made it 10 steps before one of the pumpkin vines lashed out and snagged his ankle. Frankie fell to the ground, landing right on his face. He was screaming like a little girl. Before the other two had time to react, they too were accosted by the vines, which yanked them both to the ground. "Help! Help us!" They all shouted the same thing. With a grin still plastered to his face, Liam turned and watched as the Pumpkin King rose out of the pumpkin patch in all his glory. This had been part of Liam's plan all along. He knew his tormentors would show up, just like last year's 5th grade bullies showed, and the year before that too. For each year, the Pumpkin King demanded a sacrifice, and Liam never failed to produce. The Pumpkin King arose, a 10-foot figure, torso consisting of thick, intertwined vines that wrapped around one another to form a tree trunk of sorts. The head of the king was a large and ripe jack-o'-lantern, fluid in its expression. Once again a witness to the great sight, Liam fell to one knee and placed his palms in the dirt, showing his respect. "Help!" the three tormentors continued to shout in a pathetic sort of way, in a way that made them laugh when their previous victims produced the same panicked screaming. "Pumpkin King," said Liam, "I have once again brought you non-believers." "No," shouted Frankie. We believe. We really believe." The Pumpkin King smiled down at Liam. He approved. And with that, the vines that held onto the three screaming brats began to drag them toward the king. They screamed and hollered like they never screamed and hollered before, but no one was coming. Like the mouth of a python, the Pumpkin King's jaws unhinged weirdly, and his mouth opened wide. Very, very wide. Inside the mouth, floating around in the squashy guts and seeds, were a few remaining skulls and bones from past year's offerings. The bullies all dug their fingertips into the dirt as they were dragged closer and closer to the Pumpkin King's maw. Their petrified faces more delightful than Liam had anticipated. "Please," Frankie shouted in a last-ditched effort to save his skin. "Liam, make it stop." And with that, the three bullies were slurped right into the Pumpkin King's mouth, a loud squelching noise filling the air as their bodies became submerged in the piles of guts inside. Their screams too became submerged, muffled, and eventually silenced. The morning after Halloween, candy wrappers littered the streets. Toilet paper was strung out along several front lawns. A handful of people tore down their Halloween decorations at the crack of dawn before the workday began. Among the townspeople returning to their regular lives were three sets of worried parents, wondering where their boys had gone. Last Frankie's mom had seen him, he was departing the house with an empty pillowcase and that sycophantic smile as he waved her goodbye. Aspen's mom watched as her son departed with Frankie, and Tyler's mom had only heard a half-hearted bye uttered by her son, followed by the sound of the back door slamming. Search parties were sent out to look. No one nor nothing turned up. Liam said not a word of it, of course. The day following Halloween was always a somber one for him, because it meant he had to wait another year to see his god. Eventually, the search parties went looking for the missing boys in the pumpkin patch. They searched the entire patch, looking for any sign of the missing boys. A watch, a glove, a bag of candy, anything. And after the search parties rummaged through the pumpkin patch, Liam found himself watching the story on the news that evening. As he plucked the peas from his otherwise satisfactory pot pie, he smirked at the image on the television screen. His very own handiwork, the phrase Inri carved into the side of a pumpkin. If you thought that was terrible, wait till you hear this story, with shared narrative duties by Dr. Creepin and myself. Another terrifying pumpkin tale about nefarious doings and very strange orange pumpkins. I present to you The Pumpkin by Trace of Base. The great thing about fall is that it's perfect for going for walks in the woods. And by walks in the woods, I mean going out with friends and getting stoned. It's really fun to just grab some friends, grab a pot, and smoke up. But last night was different. I'm still a little freaked out right now. Bear with me. I'll try to fill you in as best I can. So I got a call from my friend Dave asking me if I'm going down to smoke up. I think it was around 5. I grabbed my North Face and waited for him to drive up. Dave's a pretty chill guy. We go to university together. I think he's a sociology major or something. I don't know. What I do know is that he's a good hookup for cannabis. Guy's always calling me to smoke. He showed up in his beat-up, shitty car, and we drove out to the woods near my place. Why not? You're not judging me, are you? Anyway, we went to our usual smoke spot, a small clearing in the woods. There's a stump in the middle of it, and we usually sit on it and smoke. But that's not important. So we got to the spot, and it's completely deserted as usual. It's not too dark out yet, perfect for our evening plans. Sun was just starting to go down. After sparking a few bowls and spacing out, I noticed that Dave had wandered away. And the problem with Dave is, when he's left to his own devices, he might end up hurting himself. Normally he's pretty easy to find, but it was getting dark, so I had to go and find him. "Dave! Dave!" I yelled, walking through the trees. No sign of him. The woods aren't that big. He couldn't have gone far. I tried doubling back to the clearing. Maybe he just wandered back there. When I got there, I didn't see Dave, but on the stump was a pumpkin. Given that Halloween was only a few days ago, I figured it was just someone throwing it away. After all, the clearing isn't that far into the woods. Maybe they wanted to biodegrade it or something like that. But it hadn't been tipped over or carelessly tossed there. It looked like it had been set there. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a pumpkin. It was carved into a sinister-looking jack-o'-lantern. I can't even describe it. It just looked evil. There was even a candle inside it, illuminating it in the dusky light. I felt really uneasy. "Dave, don't tell me this is your pumpkin," I tried calling to my friend. No response. I looked back at the pumpkin. I swear it was staring at me. I couldn't shake it. Suddenly I heard a rustle behind me. I thought it was Dave trying to screw with me. I figured he put the pumpkin there. Whirling around, I realized I was wrong. It wasn't Dave. It was some strange hooded figure, wearing what looked like a black robe. This guy was probably 7 feet tall. I froze. Who the hell was this guy? Why was he watching us? I reached for my flashlight I always kept handy in Dave and Mai's wood tips, but the guy ran. I tried chasing him, yelling for him to stop. Of course he didn't. This guy was fast, nimble, like some goddamn animal. Out of nowhere, I felt a hand grab me from behind. I immediately swung a fist, connecting it with whatever or whoever grabbed me. When I turned around, Dave was lying on the ground, rubbing his jaw. "What the hell, man?" He sat up, still nursing his new injury. "Dave, I was just looking for you, and this guy and the pumpkin." "Dude, what are you talking about?" he interrupted. Rising to his feet, he brushed off the dirt from his jacket. "You just took off running. I just wanted to stop you before you got hurt or something," he explained. "I didn't see anyone." I pulled out my flashlight and shined it in the direction the strange figure went. No sign of anyone being there. Dave motioned toward the clearing. "Come on, dude, let's get out of here. You gotta watch yourself when you're smoking." When we got back to the clearing, I pointed to the stump. There was the pumpkin, still there. I wasn't going crazy, but it was different. It was all rotted and moldy. This is the pumpkin? Dude, this thing is gross. I was confused. I swear, it wasn't like this before. There was no sign of the candle in it, no sign of it even being a recognizable pumpkin in the last few days. Thinking back on when I first saw it, I don't know why I didn't take a picture or something just to prove it to him. Regardless, the pumpkin was a mushy pile of rot. It wasn't the jack-o'-lantern I saw earlier. Dave couldn't tell I was freaked out. All right, let's get out of here, I nodded. Getting back to the car, he asked, "You okay? You look really pale." I tried to tell him about the figure I had seen, but I knew he wouldn't listen. "Can we come back tomorrow? I think I dropped something back there." He offered to go back and find it, but I waved him off. "It's dark. I'll find it in the morning." He didn't seem convinced, but with the way I reacted to the rotted pumpkin, he knew I wasn't in the mood to go back and look. We arrived at my apartment complex, and burning on the front porch was a freshly carved jack-o'-lantern. Inside was a candle, illuminating its smiling pumpkin face for all to see. Dave pointed to it. "Cool, dude! I didn't notice that earlier." I did my best to keep my composure. That's because it wasn't there before. I got out of the car, and Dave yelled, "Calm yourself, buddy. Relax." And with that, he sped off. Something wasn't right. That pumpkin couldn't be a coincidence. I waited for Dave to be gone to take a look at the pumpkin. It looked like a normal pumpkin. Orange, round, carved out with a goofy face, casting an ominous shadow on the steps leading to the front door. I didn't think much of it until I realized there was a piece of paper taped to the back of it. I took it, my hand quivering. Written in shaky handwriting read, "We'll see you tomorrow. Don't be late."
After the events that transpired yesterday, I was kind of scared to go back to the woods. But I had to go back. I wanted to go back when it was still light out. So I called him around noon to go back. One of the worst parts about not having a car, having to rely on other people. And Dave, well, he's not the most reliable. I called him at noon. He showed up at 2. Well, late or not, I wanted to figure out what the hell had happened. As I walked out of my apartment, I noticed something odd. The pumpkin from yesterday was gone. Dave didn't seem to notice. I did. We got into the car and drove off to the woods. Conversation was light. "So, what did you drop back there?" Might try to think of something to say that would merit needing to go back. Problem is, I'm not quick on my feet. My keys. Dave chuckled. "Man, we just came out from your place. I think you got your keys." The tension began to thicken. Dave could tell something was up. My work keys." He smiled. He could tell I was lying, but he didn't want to say anything. Arriving at the woods, Dave turned to me asking if I knew where I'd dropped my keys. I needed an excuse to be able to explore freely. I don't know, dude. Somewhere out there. We should split up." He nodded and started off to the left. I began walking toward where I ran off the day prior. The stump in the clearing was abandoned. There was no sign of the man from the night prior. Even with the light of day, not even so much as a branch seemed out of order. As I wandered deeper, I thought I heard voices. faint at first. I couldn't quite make them out. Maybe this is the same guys as last time. I decided to proceed with caution. We'll get him soon. The harvest will be wonderful. Yes, we just need him delivered at the right time. I ducked down, walking slowly toward the voices. One was deep and ominous, where the other was more nasal, almost like Dave's voice. Hiding among the trees, I saw two figures wearing similar black robes to the guy yesterday. They had their backs to me, so I inched closer. Is he aware? He saw me last night, but I was able to escape. Oh God, this was the guy from last night. I wanted to get closer to approach them and find out why they were watching me. But what was I going to do? I had nothing to apprehend them with. Should I call the cops? What would I even tell them? I backed away slowly. I wanted to find Dave. Maybe the two of us could apprehend these guys. But if you've ever been walking in the woods backwards, you realized how hard it is to be stealthy. Of course, I stepped on a branch. The inadvertent snap echoed loudly through the woods, and I saw the figures whirl around. I started to run, not looking back. There was a good chance they were gaining on me, but I had no idea. I just kept running. It wouldn't do me any good to look back. I just wanted to get away from these guys. Their talk of the harvest frightened me. What was it? When I got back to the clearing, I blindly ran into Dave, knocking him to the ground. Easy there, dude. I helped him to his feet and noticed a piece of black fabric clinging to his jacket. I wanted to tell him about the figures I saw and what I heard, but the fibers threw me off. Was Dave one of them? He bent over to the grass and leaves littering the floor. Hey, found your keys, dude. He held up a keychain that was definitely my work keys. I don't remember dropping them. Thanks, I said, apprehensively taking them from him. He motioned to the car. Want to get out of here, or do you want to? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a bag of herbs. Get straight up baked. I warily looked at the bag. Looked like pot to me. What hurt could it do? I shrugged. Dave pulled out a pipe from his jacket, packed it and said, Dude, you're going to have some weird-ass experiences out here. Why don't you spark it first and I'll make sure you don't go all schizo. He waved his hands near his head, taunting me. I put the pipe to my lips, sparked a lighter and inhaled deeply. The smoke filled my lungs and burned. A different burn, as I remember. The last thing I remember is Dave nodding and smiling. Everything started going hazy. And then I woke up, at home. I wanted to tell you about this to try and help me figure out what's going on. When I woke up, I splashed some water on my face and noticed some weird markings on my wrist and chest, just below my neckline. They looked like Celtic symbols. When I did some Googling, I found out that the ones on my wrist are the Triskele, representing the sea, sky, and land, and the one on my chest is a Triquerta, representing the unity of physicality, mentality, and spirituality. I'm not sure what these mean, or even if I'm getting them right. I'm kind of freaked out. I'm afraid these people are going to come for me. I don't remember coming home. They know where I live. The scariest part, sitting on my dining room table in my apartment was another pumpkin. It was not carved this time, but it was hollowed out. Inside was a lit candle. How it didn't go out with the top on, I have no idea. The candle went out the minute I opened the lid.
I'm sitting here in the dark. The pumpkin that was on my table is gone. I tossed it out the window the first chance I got. I half expected there to be some kind of note, but there wasn't. Just the pumpkin. The markings on my arms, they're not coming off. I tried scrubbing them as hard as I could. Still nothing. I think they might actually be tattooed on me. I'll try rewinding things to fill you in. A million things are running through my mind. What is Dave doing with these guys? Is he one of them? Does he have those tattoos? I guess I never really paid that much attention. How did they get into my apartment? What's with the pumpkins? What about the cops? I've got to be careful. First thing I did after getting rid of the pumpkin was to find my gun. Dave never knew about it, so I guess I've got that going for me. It was still there, a 9mm handgun. I checked it to make sure the bullets were still there. Maybe I've watched too many movies, but they were. I stuffed it into the back of my jeans. I needed protection to do what I intended. I also packed a bag with some clothes and personal items. I wasn't going back home. I wasn't going to class. I was going to the cops. Screw going to class. Screw pumpkins. And especially screw Dave. So I don't have a car. That was a problem. The police station is a few miles away. Luckily, I've got a bike. I hate riding into town just because of sheer distance, but I was too full of adrenaline to figure out what was going on. When I walked out my front door, I saw that everyone on the block was taking down their Halloween decorations. But here's just the thing. There were rocks lining the walkway up to my apartment. Not all the same, but definitely meant to show something. They bore all the markings that were on my chest and wrists, just lined up neatly, clearly put there by someone who knew I was there. I grabbed one and ran. The rock I grabbed seemed heavier than it looked. I threw it in my jacket, tucked it under my arm, and got on my bike. With this, I could prove to the police that something was happening. I rode hard and fast, trying to get there as quickly as I could. When I got there, I locked up my bike, held the stone in my hand, and looked at it. It seemed warm, as if it were alive. Weird. I walked into the station and was greeted by a blinding white light. The walls seemed sterile and clean. The entire office seemed fake, like something out of a movie set. No prisoners were sitting on the bench. It was just a police station. I walked up to the front desk and told them that I needed to speak to a detective. I was told to wait. So I waited, and waited, and waited for what seemed like hours. Finally, a detective came up to me. He had red hair, a moustache, and he kind of squinted menacingly as I stood up, as if he was sizing me up. The detective introduced himself as Detective Dawson. Whatever, I didn't care. I just wanted to find out what the hell was going on. I explained everything to him, leaving out the part about smoking pot. I said we were just going for a walk or something when we came across this stuff in the clearing. I showed him the rock and the tattoos. The whole time he seemed skeptical, like I was just some kid messing with him. He picked up the rock, looked it over, saw the designs. He tossed it back to me. The force of the rock hitting me in the chest kind of threw me back, almost like he meant to throw it at me. Kid, we get shit like this all the time. It's probably just some bullshit prank from your friend. I guess we can keep an eye out for things, but between you and me, I think you're full of shit. He stood up and motioned toward the door. So I figured if they wouldn't believe me, maybe they would if someone ended up dead. I just hoped it wasn't me. As I got back to my bike, I ran my finger over the gun in my waistband. If I saw anything out of the ordinary, I was going to shoot first and ask questions later. I needed a place to stay. I would normally go to Dave's to hide out, but that wasn't happening. I rode my bike up to a... In fact, it's probably best I don't say where I am staying. I locked up my bike in the front, walked in, and said I needed a room. They asked how long. I said indefinitely. I didn't want to give them a credit card, but I had to for incidentals. I swear the clerk saw the tattoos on my arm and was staring the whole time. After getting my key, I made sure to double the lock. I probably shouldn't be using the computer, but I want to see if you guys can help me. I'm so scared. I'm sitting in the dark so they can't tell I'm here. The windows are closed and locked. The curtains are drawn. With the clerk staring, I'm worried. Should I keep moving?